Hey Grace Church, my name is Josh. Welcome to the weekly for the week of July 31st. Today we are talking about how to guard and garden your marriage. So this week we started a series called The Storm-Tossed Family, and for the next 3 weeks we're going to talk about what is family, what is God's design for family, and why is it that in a family, and you know this just from your experience growing up, you get to experience some of the highest joys that life offers and some of the deepest pain that life offers. And both of those happen in the context of family. So is there a design that we can look to that can help us make it through the storms that we face as a family together? So if we're going to talk about family, we have to start at the very beginning, like all the way back to the book of Genesis, how God created this. And in Genesis chapter 2, we read that God created man, and from man's side, God created woman, and they are then brought together. And there's some principles that come out of the creation account that we learned this Sunday. And so here's a few of them. Number one, man and woman were created by God in His image as the pinnacle of creation. So there's a lot of things being created, but the crescendo of creation is man and woman being created in the image of God, which is not attributed to anything else in creation, only given to us. And then we are given the breath of God, the imprint of God. We have the ability to reason and engage things. We are made in God's image, and man and woman are brought together. And then this leads to the second part, that marriage, and this is Adam and Eve, we see this marriage is the doing of God for the glory of God. That God brought man and woman together. He did that. It's His idea. This may make us uncomfortable, but sex is God's idea. It shouldn't make you uncomfortable. That should make you feel like this is a good thing. God created sex. God created marriage in the context of sex, and that is a good and glorious thing. And it's all done for His glory, and in His mind, He created that. And the next thing we learn is that God officiated the first wedding ceremony. That God officiated Adam and Eve becoming one flesh. That's how the Bible talks about marriage, that man and woman would become one flesh. And they're naked in the end of Genesis chapter 2. They're naked and unashamed together. And they're not unashamed because their bodies are perfect. They're unashamed because they're naked in the context of covenantal love. That's the picture. That man's created, woman's created at the pinnacle of creation in the image of God, given the breath of God. He officiates the first ceremony, and they walk together in unhindered intimacy because they are they're under the shadow of covenantal love, and that's why they can be unashamed. And so it's really beautiful, and it's a great starting point for us to go from there and to outwork from there for the rest of the family. So to recap, God creates us, God creates marriage. He officiates the first ceremony. The marriage is designed for a leaving of mother and father to cleave. So leave and cleave, it's kind of fun. It rhymes together. It makes me think of Leave It to Beaver for whatever reason. But leave and cleave, it's beautiful. And that's the end of Genesis chapter 2. And then the next chapter, everything is broken. Sin enters the world. And what was good in God's eyes is broken because of sin. And so we as people who are in this broken world, we have to play some offense and play some defense when it comes to our marriage. So the way we frame this out is we need to guard our marriage in some defensive ways, and we need to garden our marriage in some offensive ways so that we can have flourishing. Because listen, staying married, there's some lies that it's not about staying in love. That's not the point of marriage. You don't have a thriving marriage because you magically chose the right person and you guys walk through life without any problem. You have a thriving, flourishing marriage because you love each other enough to work at it, and you love each other enough to fight for each other. And so I want to talk through briefly some ways that you guard your marriage and some ways you garden your marriage. So this guard your marriage concept, it's the understanding that it's your responsibility, both husband and wife, it's both of your responsibilities to fight the negative and deceptive claims of sin that are coming against your marriage. You got to fight against those because they're coming against you. So you got to know God's word and see the warnings that He gives about these things. You need to be cautious about your relationship with members of the opposite sex. You need to be mindful of the influences that are shaping the way you think about things, the way you're moved and romanticized about things. You need to guard that stuff and fight back and recognize that there is a real enemy, and he hates marriage. He hates it. He doesn't want it to flourish. He doesn't want it to be successful. And so he's going to invite you to get bored in your marriage. He's going to invite you to get tempted in your marriage. The enemy's going to invite you to get curious about things you should have never been curious about in your marriage. And he's going to ultimately scheme in ways to defeat you. And you've got to fight back against that. And so guarding your marriage is saying, I'm going to intentionally engage all of the deceptive claims, all of the negative claims of sin that are coming against my marriage, and I'm going to take responsibility to fight back against those, because God has designed marriage to be a holy thing, to make me holy. And so I'm going to fight back against the sin that comes against it. That's how we guard it. So secondly, we garden our marriage. So what does it mean to garden our marriage? It means to spend intentional time and energy pursuing what is right and true. So guarding is fighting against the negative, deceptive claims. Gardening is pursuing what is right and true. That's the offensive thing. So what does this mean? It means intentionally deepen your understanding about what God intends your marriage to be. And so that means read marriage books. That means go to marriage counseling. That means join marriage classes. There is no shame at all. I know, like I've had friends reading marriage books and they feel ashamed, like, oh, I don't want to show you I'm reading that. It's like, no, bro, I'm so happy that you're reading this book about what you are taking part in as a husband and a wife. So intentionally deepen your understanding about marriage. Intentionally listen to things that push you to understand more of God's design. Secondly, intentionally, daily spend quality time with your spouse. Your life is busy, and if you are not careful, you will become calendar buddies with your spouse. And all you'll do is check calendars, and you'll miss out on intentional engagement. Cultivate a common interest. Read a book together. Spend time together. Whatever it takes to get together. Serve together. Marriage does not give you an excuse to get out of serving and being a part of life together. It invites you to have a partner to do all of that with, and to have a best friend to do that with. So intentionally spend quality time with your spouse. And then lastly, intentionally, daily, speak encouragement and life over your spouse and your marriage. Your words can heal your marriage, or they can hurt your marriage. If you're a husband speaking harshly to your wife, if you're a wife speaking harshly to your husband, that can really start to crack the foundation of a marriage. So say things like, I love you because ... I'm proud of you because ... Can I pray for you today? Can I pray for you right now? I'm thankful for you because ... Tell your wife how beautiful she is. Tell your spouse what you think about them in a way that lifts them up and affirms them and encourages them. Your words have a cleansing effect over your spouse in a way that no one else's words do. Other people say nice things about you, but none of that's going to hit you in the soul in the same way that a spouse would say when they say nice things about you. And so in closing, I gave you a really practical thing to say, here's a way that you can encourage your marriage, and it's 33 and a half minutes. This is the most practical I can be. 33 and a half minutes will get you going to bed at night as a closer couple. So 30-second kiss, 30-minute uninterrupted talk, and a 3-minute prayer. Most practical as I can be. You go, how do I garden my marriage this week? Try this. If it's a tool that helps you, then may it help you. If you're like, no thanks, I don't want it, that's okay. 33 and a half minutes. A 30-minute uninterrupted talk. I know that's like very difficult. Try it. 30-minute uninterrupted talk. 3-minute prayer, 30-second kiss. 33 and a half minutes. And by God's grace, you will fight back against the sin and the deception. You will move forward into God's design for marriage, and you will have a secure attachment that allows you to face the storms of this life in your family. So, Grace Church, my hope is that you have a great conversation about how to flourish the home, starting with the marriage.